The Colorado Rockies lose once again, this time by a final score of 5-0 in the opening game of the series against the Minnesota Twins. They also lose catcher Elias Diaz in the process. All in all, an awful start to the week for the Colorado Rockies. Offense spoils another good outing from starting pitcher Dakota Hudson, and the saga continues with this Colorado Rockies team. Let's talk about it. We'll break it all down on tonight's episode of your Locked On Rockies POSTCAST. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rockies POSTCAST, powered by Mile High Sports, part of Locked On Sports Denver on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, that was not fun, although it was a quick game. So I guess a quick death for the Rocky fan on this Monday as the Colorado Rockies lose to the Minnesota Twins by a final score of 5-0. They are shut out in this ball game. Just a disappointing performance for a number of reasons. Not only do they lose the game, but they lose all-star catcher Elias Diaz along the way. So injuries now starting to pile up. Remember, this is a team that is without German Marquez. They've been without him the entire season. Kyle Freeland's been on the shelf. Nolan Jones has been on the shelf. Brendan Rodgers goes on the shelf. And now it looks like, I don't want to speculate, Buddy Black, as I look to my right, is talking right now. But it did not look good for catcher Elias Diaz. And we'll talk about him for a majority of the second segment on tonight's Locked On Rockies POSTCAST, the impact of potentially losing him for any period of time, whether it's a game, a series, multiple series, couple months. I don't know. I'm not trying to speculate that much. We don't really know what's going on with Diaz yet, but all we do know is he looked pretty bad coming out of the batter's box as that really zapped all the momentum for the Rockies in this game. But what's going on, everyone? I'm your host, Aniello Piro. Be sure to check me out on social media at Media by AP. Also, make sure to subscribe to this brand spanking new Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel. We're just getting started. And if this is your first time listening to a Locked On Rockies POSTCAST, maybe you're listening to the traditional Locked On Rockies feed. Who's this guy? What's this POSTCAST? Well, just about after each and every Colorado Rockies game, the rest of the way, you'll hear from either myself or a member of the Mile High Sports staff, and we'll break down everything we just saw, all the news and notes as it pertains to the Colorado Rockies game that night, and also do a little bit of a look ahead and some general reaction to what goes down in between the 9 innings or so on a night in and night out basis. So again, be sure to follow me on social media at Media by AP, and make sure to subscribe to this Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel as we're just getting started. This is Locked On Sports, though, your team every day. And today's episode of the Locked On Rockies POSTCAST is presented by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms, they do apply. But again, Locked On MLB is the code to use when you sign up with our friends over at Game Time for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's get into it. And, you know, I was texting with Paul Holden a little bit, who's the host of the standard Locked On Rockies POSTCAST. And if you haven't checked out his episode from Monday morning or Monday afternoon, be sure to do so, because I thought he made a couple of valid points just about the way that Buddy Black is configuring his lineup, you know, who maybe should get more playing time than others, and obviously the youth movement that is currently going on with this Rockies team. So be sure to check out that episode. I was listening to it this morning or this afternoon, and he did a great job of making some pretty valid points. Obviously, Adiel Amador, the latest young Rocky to, you know, crack his way into the big leagues. Obviously, you've got Ezekiel Tovar. We've got Brenton Doyle, who's 26, Nolan Jones coming back off the IL. I do think, as disappointing as this game and this loss was, I do still believe that there's reason for optimism moving forward with this team. But this game, this series, this season, not so good. More so par for the course, I think, of what the Rocky fan is used to. But let's dive into it. And my big takeaway here, guys, before we kind of talk about how Minnesota scored their runs, how this game progressed and whatnot, the bottom line, in my opinion, is the Rockies have now spoiled 2 consecutive pretty solid outings from their starting pitchers. I know yesterday Ty Blach wasn't nearly as good as Dakota Hudson was today, but good enough and pretty darn good for the Rockies by their standards. An organization that is always yearning for consistency in the pitching department, whether it's the starters or the relief pitchers. We'll talk about, maybe the decision to pull Dakota Hudson. I know he worked his way 6 2/3 is what he finished with tonight, but it was 2-0, I believe, when they yanked him in this game. And then, things ballooned from there. Look, the Rockies probably weren't going to win this game anyway, but, when you're in the middle of, what is this? 3 against the Dodgers, 3 against the Reds, 6 plus 4, that's 10, 13 consecutive games, if I'm doing the mental math correctly in my head, maybe you try to get a little bit more out of your starting pitching. But that, like I said, that's my big takeaway today is the Rockies actually finished with 6 hits. They were actually out hitting Minnesota for a majority of this game until the pitching swap happened. But in yesterday's series finale, a game that the Rockies lost, I want to say 5-1, Ty Blach goes 5 innings pitched, 8 hits, 4 runs, 4 earned runs, all of them earned, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, a home run, drops his ERA down to 4.84, but only 79 pitches. So, a guy in Ty Blach who I know has been a little up and down throughout his major league career, but well under 100 pitches, he gets yanked from that game. Rockies lose. And then today, Dakota Hudson, I think probably the best start from a Rocky starting pitcher in the time that I've been doing this show. He finishes with 6 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 runs, only 1 earned, 2 walks and a strikeout, drops his ERA to 4.87. And if I was hearing correctly on the post-game broadcast from the TV crew, this is something like the 5th time this year that the Rockies have failed to give Dakota Hudson any run support. He's on the hook for the loss in this game, which is why you can't use wins and losses as the ultimate judgment point for the success and the failures or the productivity of a starting pitcher, because Dakota Hudson was on point tonight. I know he gives him a couple of runs, so it's not like we're talking about a Cy Young candidate or, vintage Jacob deGrom or vintage Clayton Kershaw, insert great, pitcher here, but certainly good enough. And I would say a B+, if not an A- average for the Rockies starting pitching. That's what you long for on a game in, game out basis. And the Rockies offense just unable to provide Dakota Hudson with any run support. So I just think that's disappointing, because you get 2 productive starts from your starting pitchers in consecutive games, and you wind up on the losing end in both of those games. The Rockies can't afford. Here's the thing, because Colorado is going to lose, a handful of games by 5+ runs like they did tonight, but they were in this game for a majority of it. But when you're in these games and your pitching's doing their job at a relatively high level, if you're the Rockies offense, you cannot afford to be asleep at the wheel. And that's what's been the case here over the last couple of games. Only 1 run scored for the Rockies in there. Let me confirm that as well, just so I make sure I'm giving you guys the right information. But if memory serves me correct, dating back to yesterday's, they lost 5-1 yesterday, and then they lose 5-0 today. So the Rockies have been outscored 10 runs to 1 in the last 2 games for them. And look, I know that Sunday's game was against St. Louis, today's against Minnesota, 2 different levels of opponent, one in the American League, one in the National League, but still the common denominator in both of those losses is the offense, and it has been dormant. Again, we're not used, I feel like, at least to talking about a Rockies sputtering offense. Usually they lose these games like 10-7 and they're able to put up the runs, but the pitching is just abysmal. And at least in the last couple of games, that has been the opposite here for the Colorado Rockies. The stat line tonight for old pal Chris Paddock, remember, a former member of the San Diego Padres, he deals tonight 6 1/3 innings pitched, 6 hits, no runs, no walks, 6 strikeouts, drops his ERA down to 4.79. And I also think, listening to Drew Goodman on the postgame show right before I got started here, I believe he has a sub-3 ERA for his career against the Colorado Rockies. So, like I said, guys, just a frustrating game across the board, specifically with the way that it started with Elias Diaz. No outs, 2 runners on. Like I said, we'll really dive into that and the impact of losing him coming up here in just a minute. But it felt like out of the gate, you had an opportunity to put some runs on the board, and the Diaz injury and frankly, the Rockies just never recovered. But just a disappointing game for this Rockies team as they now spoil, like I said, 2 consecutive solid starting 2 solid outings from their starting pitchers in Ty Blach and Dakota Hudson in consecutive games. But Minnesota tonight, they got their scoring started in the 3rd inning. Manny Margot with a 1-out double to right field. He gets to third base on a throwing error from Hunter Goodman, who I'll touch on briefly a little bit later on in this program as well. And then he scores via a sacrifice fly from Christian Vasquez in the third inning. So that's how the first run of the game gets scored. And the Twins added another run in the fourth inning with Trevor Larch leading off with a single to left. Royce Lewis then grounds into a force out, so they get one out there. Max Kepler then grounds out as well to advance Roy Lewis to second. And then Carlos Correa, one of the household names on that Minnesota Twins roster, he drives him home with a double to right field. That puts up the Minnesota Twins 2-0. So that's how the scoring gets started in this game, but really pretty quiet up until that point, until the eighth inning. Remember, this is after Dakota Hudson had been yanked from this game in favor of Rockies relief. I guess that's the one good thing, is you only use two pitchers tonight, like I said, in the middle of a stretch like this. But Nick Mears called in to relieve Dakota Hudson, and he gets into some trouble in the eighth inning. Christian Vasquez rips a double to right field. Willie Castro singles to left. Trevor Larch sac fly. That makes it 3-0. And then the icing on the cake tonight for the Minnesota Twins is a Roy Lewis 2-run home run in that eighth inning, which makes it 5-0. And that is your final score in this one. So that's how the runs were scored tonight for the Minnesota Twins. Nothing crazy, some small balls, some sacrifice flies, and a home run along the way. But the Rockies offense, like I said, just not doing enough, not providing any run support. A goose egg is 0 runs. You don't see that too often with this Rockies club. Just no run support for starting pitcher Dakota Hudson. And you can't win baseball games, guys, if you're not going to score runs. So hopefully that will change as this series progresses before the Rockies will get an off day, a much-needed off day, I may add, coming up this week, I believe on Thursday, because this is a 3-game set. So we'll see what happens the rest of the way. Yeah, no game on Thursday for the Rockies, so they play tomorrow, they play Wednesday, and then they'll get a much-needed rest day. So we'll see what happens. But all right, let's hit a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about Elias Diaz, the injury that he sustained, how it may impact the Rockies. No word yet on just how long he may be out, but any amount of time without Elias Diaz in the lineup is not a good thing for the Rockies. So stick with us. We'll hit a quick break. We'll come back and do just that on your Locked On Rockies postcast. All right, let me tell you about our friends over at Game Time real quick, guys, because summer's here. Look, I know people love to get their Rockies tickets right before the game, outside the stadium, whatever it might be. Be sure to get your tickets with our friends over at Game Time, because they do an absolutely fantastic job. And Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, guys, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes every ounce of the guesswork out of buying tickets to Major League Baseball games. Pick out any specific game or matchup. They're going to have them all, guys. And there's a number of different features that you're going to want to take advantage of on the Game Time app. Number one being their priority last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater, all that good stuff with our friends over at Game Time. You got to be sure to check out their flash deals, where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of their game or event. Zone deals. Save even more money when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats for you. All in pricing. This is my favorite part. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Also, the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Their lowest ticket price guarantee, or Game Time, will credit you 110% of the difference. Not just 100%, because that's not good enough from Game Time. 110% of the difference is what you're going to get. And of course, Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms, they do apply, but again, create an account and redeem with code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed, with our friends over at Game Time. I'm heading out to Wrigley Field for the Mets and the Cubs series at the end of this month, and you best believe I'm going to be getting my tickets from Game Time, and you should too. Be sure to check out our friends over at Game Time, guys. Code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Let them know that Locked On Rockies postcast sent you, and enjoy the game. All right, so welcome on back into your Locked On Rockies postcast. I'm your host, Aniello Piro. Hope you guys are hanging in there on this Monday night after the Colorado Rockies fall to the Minnesota Twins by a final score of 5-0 on this Monday, June the 10th. We're cruising right along. I believe the Rockies are 23-43. So, we're getting to the middle portion of we really are in the middle portion of this season. So I think we've started to figure out what the identity of this Rockies team is. Minnesota improves to 35-31. They're a good ball club. They just have to look up at the Cleveland Guardians, who got off to that scorching hot start. So they've got some ground to make up, and they definitely get some help in that department tonight with a 5-0 victory over the fight. I can't even call them the fighting Colorado Rockies. Your Colorado Rockies, our Colorado Rockies. I don't know what you want to call them, but that was a bad performance tonight. Just really nothing going on offense for them. 6 hits total in the game. Let's see. Charlie Blackmon gets a couple of hits. Ezequiel Tovar stays hot. He has a hit. He's hitting 293 on the year. Ryan McMahon, another 0-4 tonight with 2 strikeouts. He has been in an absolute slump. And McMahon tonight hitting 4th. Brenton Doyle 0-4 tonight, 3 strikeouts for him. Toglia stays hot with a base hit. Jake Cave with a base hit. But that's pretty much it for the Colorado Rockies tonight in the offensive department. They scored no runs, a goose egg tonight, so you hate to see that. But game aside, the big takeaway from this outing on Monday night is the Rockies are going to lose catcher Elias Diaz in this game. And let me see if I can get a quick update here. I'll do it live on the show because I'm sure Buddy Black had something to say, but I started doing this show as he was talking. But I'd imagine that there's probably something out by now. Nursing calf issue. I'm not seeing anything in particular, which is a little surprising. Oh, here we go. Rockies, this is from Evan Lang on Twitter, Evan_Lang27. Rockies catcher Elias Diaz is day-to-day with a calf strain that's been bothering him for a couple of weeks, according to manager Bud Black. The training staff will try to treat it over the next few days. It's not yet known if Diaz will go on the IL. And I'll come right out and say it. Look, if you got to give him a couple of days off to get to this rest day on Thursday and see if you can get him back in the lineup on Friday, you do it. Jacob Stallings is likely going to be the backup here for Elias Diaz in the interim. But you need Elias Diaz in your lineup as much as possible because with Ryan McMahon slumping right now, look, Tovar's been great, but part of the reason Tovar is so effective is because he has some protection around him with Diaz and McMahon. With McMahon struggling and no Diaz, that protection is going to evaporate overnight. So we'll see what happens here, but it looks like it is a calf strain. Looked like a hamstring injury out of the box, but if you haven't seen it, just type in Elias Diaz on social media, on Twitter. It's probably on YouTube as well. And it's unfortunate because it felt like the Rockies actually had a little bit of momentum out of the gate in this game. They had a couple runners on first and second with no out, and that brings Diaz up to the plate. Let me see how they got on base with those hits real quick if I could. Yeah, so Charlie Blackmon leads off the game with a single to center field, and then Tovar follows it up as well with a single on a bunt ground ball to the pitcher. So you have 2 runners on and no outs, and then Elias Diaz rips like I guess it's technically a ground ball, but I mean, this thing was a bullet off the bat. It required a diving play from the Minnesota Twins third baseman. So it was technically a double play ball, but Diaz, who's not exactly the fastest guy in the world, probably would have been able to beat this out had he been able to run at full speed. And so you see them make the force out at second, and then the throwback to first, and like Diaz is just nowhere to be found. We're like, wow, what's going on? And then you see, about a step or two out of the batter's box, just came up limping, nursing that calf hamstring area. And it's a brutal loss for the Rockies. And I thought Jeff Houston right after the game made a great point. It's one thing to deal with a leg injury, whether it's the hamstring or the calf if you're a position player, which I guess Diaz technically is, but it's another thing to deal with that injury if you're a catcher, where you have to be in that squat position, you have to be agile, you have to be mobile, explosive movements on a consistent basis, up, down, up, down, up, down. So hopefully this is not a horrific injury for Elias Diaz. But like I said, first at bat of the game with 2 runners on and no outs, he comes up limping after ripping a line drive / ground ball to third base. So that is disappointing. And just an idea, he's hitting 305 with 5 home runs, 28 RBI, and a 795 OPS so far this season. He's been one of the best catchers in Major League Baseball. And obviously that carries over to last year where he was on the All-Star team, won National League All-Star MVP, was a hero in that All-Star game. And it's all carried over for Diaz and the Rockies into this 2024 campaign. His 60 hits, this is prior to tonight's game, ranked 5th in Major League Baseball. His 12 doubles ranked 5th. This is all amongst catchers, 60 hits ranks 5th amongst catchers in Major League Baseball. The 12 doubles ranks 5th as well. His 28 RBI ranked 9th, and his 303 batting average is 3rd. So just a disappointing performance tonight for Elias, or just a disappointing outcome, rather, I should say, for Elias Diaz, because you're losing not just a top 5 catcher in the National League, you're losing a top 5 catcher in Major League Baseball. And we know that's a premium position. I mean, I think it was Paul who was talking about it on the Locked On Rockies podcast earlier today as I was listening. There's a chance Elias Diaz is maybe the greatest catcher in Colorado Rockies history. Who's the other name that comes to mind? Chris Iannetta. I have a soft spot for Jonathan Lucroy and the cup of coffee that he was here in town. But you're looking at a guy who's had a lot of production out of a position that the Rockies have traditionally not had production out of. So, you're losing a big time player here, arguably your best player, maybe not named Ezekiel Tovar at this point, maybe Ryan McMahon slumping as well, maybe your most consistent player. And replacing him is going to be no easy task for this Rockies club. So hopefully, like we said, he's listed as day-to-day per what I saw on social media. Hopefully this is a quick couple of days. Maybe, hopefully there's no days off. Hopefully Elias Diaz is in the lineup tomorrow. Hopefully he wakes up and he feels a lot better than he did coming out of the batter's box. But we all know we've all had hamstring injuries and calf injuries, probably growing up as kids or teenagers in high school, even as an adult. I wake up and my back hurts every day. But sometimes it feels a lot worse initially than it actually is. So hopefully that's the case here for Mr. Diaz, because like I said, the Rockies need him in their lineup on a consistent basis. They want to have any opportunity to try to right their wrongs and win some of these games down the stretch here. So keep an eye out for an update on Elias Diaz. It'll likely be Jacob Stallings if he does miss an extended period of time. He took over at the catcher position tonight. He's hitting .282, 3 home runs, 15 RBI with a .796 OPS in 85 at-bats. And again, I believe that 85 at-bats was before tonight's game. So he got probably 3 at-bats tonight. So factor that in as well. I guess decent production in a somewhat decent sample size, but I think we all know it's not going to be Elias Diaz production, which has been one of the lone bright spots in this Rockies lineup for the last season and a half. So that's a brutal blow for the Rockies. Again, listed as day-to-day, fingers crossed he does not miss an extended period of time. All right, let's hit a quick break, and when we come back, we'll do our 3 strikes. We'll put a bow in the show. I have a couple of more thoughts about Mr. Diaz, a couple of more thoughts about the pitching staff and the offense, and then, of course, we'll look ahead to tomorrow's game between the fighting Colorado Rockies and the Minnesota Twins. Stick with us, folks. Back in just a few minutes. All right, let me tell you about our friends over at Supply House real quick, guys, because get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every single time. I love that, guys. Like every time I go to the bank, right, they're like, hey, you could use one of these automated machines to deposit your check. No. I want to talk to a human. Face to face. Let's keep these people employed. Let's keep these people working. And frankly, I deal with enough computers I got my iPad, I've got my laptop, I've got my phone. I'm on these screens all day. I love that our friends over at Supply House are going to let you talk to a real person every single time. And hey, if you're a pro in the skilled trades business, you can get a competitive edge by joining supplyhouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to dedicated phone lines, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free memberships at supplyhouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. Again, supplyhouse.com. Be sure to check them out. Let them know that Locked On Rockies sent you. Get all your needs taken care of with our friends over at Supply House. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, welcome on back into your Locked On Rockies postcast. Get ready to put a bow on the show here as we do our three strikes segment. The Rockies lose tonight on this Monday, June the 10th by a final score of 5-0. Shut out the Rockies are as Minnesota improves to 35-31. The Rockies fall to 23-43. So just kind of in, what was I going to say? I was going to say recovery. What's the word I'm looking for? Conclusion? I don't know. I'm thinking of a word that starts with an R. Reverb? Repeat, I don't know. In conclusion, the Rockies tonight let their starting pitcher down, man. Dakota Hudson was on point for this team and has been on point for a majority of the season with an ERA of 4.87. And look, I know by standard Major League Baseball conversation, a 4.87 ERA is not very good. But for the Colorado Rockies, you'll take that, and you'll especially take it on a night where he goes 6 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 1 earned, 2 walks, and a strikeout. And to just lose that game with him only giving up 2 earned runs, I think it's obviously frustrating. Look, and Dakota Hudson's probably frustrated. Like I said, this is not the first time that the Rockies offense has failed to help him out in his starts this year, which is ultimately why you can't use the loss metric as a real way to gauge the success and failures of these starting pitchers. But just 2 consecutive games, in my opinion, where the Rockies have wasted pretty solid starting pitching. Excellent starting pitching, I would say, tonight from Dakota Hudson, giving up just those 2 earned runs. And I did kind of tease this at the beginning of the show. I'm a little surprised that Buddy Black yanked him when he did. And I forget who he yanked him in front of. Let me see if I can find that real quick, because I know the guy who he was going to pitch to try to get that final out in the 7th inning had teed off on him throughout the night. Stick with me here real quick. Bottom of the 7th. There was a couple of different moves. Yeah, so Nick Mears replaces Dakota Hudson with 2 outs there in the 7th inning, and he comes on to face Manny Margot. He gets the out, does Mears, but like I know they made note of that on the TV broadcast of like he had just been teeing off on him all night. But Dakota Hudson had well over 100 or well under 100 pitches. And we're talking about it. The Rockies are in the midst of this brutal part of the schedule. They haven't had a day off in over a week. And look, I know they only used 2 pitchers tonight in Dakota Hudson and Mears, but at the end of the day, like he was on one. And the reality of the situation is the only reason that the score balloons to 5-0. And look, you don't know what's going to happen if Dakota Hudson stays in the game, but Mears comes in and just gets somewhat shelled. He goes an inning and a third, 3 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 strikeout, and gives up the home run. So I don't know, just when you know that your bullpen's pretty shaky on a game in and game out basis, and your starting pitcher is well under 100 pitches, and we know that the Rockies starting pitching struggles to give them quality outings on a consistent basis at times, I'm a little surprised Buddy Black did not ride Dakota Hudson a little bit further tonight. Look, he's the manager. He makes the calls. It's his choice. But like I said, when you're in the midst of this brutal part of the schedule and you've got a starting pitcher who's looking like he's pitching for a playoff team, you might as well ride the hot hand. So, you know, it doesn't matter. The Rockies are probably going to lose the game anyway with the way that their offense was playing. But just an observation that I had on this one. But yeah, the Rockies have scored just 1 run in their last 2 games. So hopefully that changes tomorrow. But it's going to be hard if Elias Diaz is not in the lineup. We talked about it the entire of the last segment. He leaves the game early in the 1st inning. Kind of zapped the life out of the game. The Rockies had 2 runners on with no outs, runners on 1st and 2nd after 2 consecutive singles from Charlie Blackmon and Ezekiel Tovar. Elias Diaz rips the ball down to third base, double play ball, but a hard hit ball, and then he just comes up limping out of the batter's box after a couple of steps. So hopefully Mr. Diaz is okay. Hopefully it's not a long-term injury because the Rockies offense is certainly better without him, or better with him, excuse me. But it's one of those situations where, like I said, I just feel like it took the wind out of the Rockies' sails tonight because they did get off to a good start, but then essentially crickets the rest of the way. So we'll see what happens there. And then for tomorrow's game, we don't know who the starting pitcher will be for the Minnesota Twins. I'm sure we'll find out by the time that we wake up tomorrow, but it will be Cal Quantrill on the mound for the Rockies. And tomorrow's game scheduled for a 5:40 first pitch. This was a quick game tonight just because the Rockies didn't get many hits, so that's going to happen. But Cal Quantrill on the mound for the Rockies. He's 5-4 with a 3.58 earned run average and 51 strikeouts on the season. So we'll see what's in store for Mr. Quantrill. Last time out, he had a really good outing outside of a little bit of issue with the walks, but he goes 5 innings pitched. This is against St. Louis. 3 hits allowed, no earned runs, which is fantastic. Again, the 4 walks, which I just mentioned, and a strikeout. So hopefully Cal Quantrill building block off of his last start. And hopefully the Rockies offense gets it together and is able to provide him with some run support. Because look, Minnesota's a solid team with 35 wins and 31 losses, going to probably contend for a playoff spot, if not be in the playoffs once again. But, you'd like to see the Rockies, who, just finished up a 4-game set with the St. Louis Cardinals, played against the Dodgers on the road before having that intermediate series with the Reds in the middle. You'd like to see them, kind of snap this losing streak, now a 2-game losing streak, and get back on track and try to play 500 baseball, over the course of this road trip. So we'll see what happens here, but it will be Cal Quantrill on the mound. Oh, wait, hold on. It looks like we actually might have a starting pitcher here for Minnesota. It's going to be Louis Varland is what I'm seeing on the MLB app right now. And here's an opportunity for the Rockies offense to get hot. He's 0-4 with a 9.18 earned run average and 16 2/3 innings pitched. So this is the chance. Let's take a look at his game log. His last start was back in April. So this is a guy who has not started a game in quite some time. He went 2 2/3 innings. This was against the Detroit Tigers, who are not very good. So there's maybe some hope, maybe some optimism for the Rockies. 2 2/3 innings pitched. He gives up 3 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 home run, hit a batter, 4 walks, and 2 strikeouts. So patience, temperance. Let's see if this Rockies offense can get back on track tomorrow against a starting pitcher in Louis Varland, who has struggled in, let's see, he's only appeared in 1, 2, 3. He's only appeared in 4 games. It's looking like here for Minnesota, and he's never pitched into the 6th inning. 4 innings pitched in his first start, 5-5, and then 2 2/3 in his last start, which came all the way back on April 21st. So, decent spot for the Rockies to get right offensively. And like I said, let's hope Cal Quantrill can build off his last start as well, because it's going to be interesting. We need the Rockies to get a win. I want to talk about a win. I'll talk about it if they lose. That's the job. But this team's got some young talent, and the bullpen didn't screw them tonight that much. I mean, they were basically down and out, but the starting pitching did their job. Come on, guys. When the starting pitcher does their job, and you got German Marquez coming back, Freeland on the horizon, Nolan Jones on the horizon as well. Come on. They're better than this. They had a winning record in the month of May. Let's see what they can do the rest of the way in June, just about the halfway point here. So 23-43 is their record, 5th in the NL West. That is going to do it for me on tonight's Locked On Rockies postcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're going to do something with Paul Holden, the traditional host of the regular Locked On Rockies postcast, I believe at some point or another throughout this series. So be sure to subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. I'm on social media at Media by AP. But that's going to do it tonight as the Rockies are shut out. Only 1 run scored in their last 2 games as they're on a 2-game losing streak. The final score tonight, 5-0. Enjoy your Monday night, guys. That's going to do it for me. We'll be back at it again tomorrow after the game with another episode of the Locked On Rockies postcast.